Eternal, Emma, eternal, Om, Ete, 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 Ete.
Hey, Uja, greetings everyone. As we are continuing with our examination of the 42 laws of Maat Precepts of Truth. And the sages put these together to help to regulate society because of some of the corruption that had developed in the culture. So people were doing these things, and that's why they had to write these directives to try to regulate society and to elevate society, humanity, and culture, human culture. So we're at number 20. An a emet da, not copulated I, woman, man. I have not had sexual relations with the wife of another man. And you could easily put husband of another woman as well. And this is one of the most sensitive areas of human relationship, because when two people get together in a monogamous relationship, trust is implied. They may speak about it, but it's really implied in the construct of the relationship itself. And from a highly mystical perspective, human relationship, romantic relationship is an unusual condition for the soul, because you are essentially soul. And if you are essentially soul, it means that you are essentially something other than your physical nature. And you are essentially full within yourself. That's the goddess net entet, being absolute. And now you have conscripted yourself through your ego to an individualized identity, which is really a concept. It's a notion that's coming through your unconscious mind. And so now you've found yourself as an individual entity. And since the normal human person is working from the postulate of individuality, then by the very nature of things, that human entity will try to discover some wholeness, will try to unify with something else. And the reason why is because in that individual identity nature, you have polarized yourself to a gender polarity. So men have polarized, the soul of men have polarized to the male gender, and female have polarized the female gender. The important point to understand is that this is coming through the mind. And gender is on every level. So gender manifests in your physical body through the hormonal structure and the construct of the organs. But also gender is in the mind. And the mind precedes physicality. We're looking at it from the perspective of the creative act. And so you found yourself as an individual entity. So now through that polarity, there's a polar opposite that needs to be united with. But what you're really trying to do is you're trying to unite with God, but you don't know. And that is what is referred to as the fundamental ignorance of a human being. So instead of uniting with going directly to the divine, human beings go towards the opposite gender. Typically, if the polarities are not mixed up. If the polarities are mixed up, then people have all kinds of gender issues and gender complexities. But if the polarities are clear, then you're going to be either male or female, and you won't have any psychological issues with identifying with your gender. If the polarities are clouded and mixed up because of the Arya, which is the karmic basis, then a man might start feeling like a woman and want to change his gender, and the opposite, a woman might start feeling, she polarized the body as a female, but in the mind and the feeling, it's a male, and that's indicative of the polarities are mixed up. And it's because the complexity of the unconscious. If the polarities are clear, you're going to find yourself either male or female. And due to that polar identification, there has to be a unification with something. In other words, you're not going to individualize yourself and remain as an individual entity. To the process of the polarization process, you would have to try to unite with something. And then the males seek out the females, and the females seek out the males, etc. And when two people come together in marriage or a relationship, the complexity or the sophistication of the relationship becomes enhanced, and also the complexity. And one of the problems with a normal relationship, and we're not talking about polygamy or polyandry, those are other psychological issues that are going on there that are, I would consider very unhealthy. When the two people come together in this kind of monogamous relationship, the relationship becomes more sophisticated, but it also becomes more complicated. And the reason being is you cannot develop, you cannot discover fulfillment to trying to fulfill your polar opposite. Is when the opposites come together, there's still something missing, because the opposites cannot be truly fulfilled. Is what you, and when I say you, I mean the soul, is seeking truly, is something that is more than the sum of the opposites together. So the opposites cannot do it. So a man and a woman come together, they have conjugal relations, and they try to create a relationship through the sex act. And for the time that they're joining together or having sex or whatever, however you want to call it, it may seem fulfilling, and the bliss, the afterglow may seem fulfilling, but that quickly wears off. And the reason why is because the sex act cannot bring fulfillment, the true fulfillment of the heart. The reason being is because you're essentially soul. And what the soul is seeking is something other than polar unification, which the polarities cannot be truly unified with the physical body. It's temporary. It's as temporary as the physical sex act itself. When the sex act is over, the polarities, the unification of the polarities end. So then you're thrown back into a notion of individuality. If you were to unify the polarities in the mind, that's a complete different level. Because once the polarities are unified in the mind, then the spirit opens. That's called Hetep. Hetep means unification of opposites. That reveals the mystery of spirit. If you're trying to do that down in we'll say the lower spiritual entity, which is your physical body, it cannot, because you're dealing more now with energy, electricity of the body, and so forth. So it's completely temporary. In the mind also, it can be temporary. But if you're a true spiritual aspirant and you're working on this on yourself, hours at a time, for years at a time, the polarities can be truly unified, and the mystery of the spirit is open. But that takes time, it takes years, it takes lots of practice. That thing that you can do with the mind, it's impossible to do that with the body. It is not possible. Because again, you're dealing with energies, electricities, and the polarities of the body, and the zeal of the organs for each other. And that's temporary. The sex act itself is temporary. And so this creates an untenable situation for the soul. And the practice of celibacy and tantra is an advanced practice. And the Catholics have found out that you need preceptorship, you need advanced sages, you need advanced people to show you the way, or else you're going to start touching boys, you start molesting children, things like that. People are working and trying to deal with energies that they know nothing about. You need sages, you need saints, you need priests and priestesses, you need the hemu, you need advanced people to teach you. Yeah, and even some of the Baptist preachers and so forth having relationships outside of their marriage and so forth. They're dealing with things that they don't understand. You need a yoga master to guide you, or else you're going to have what we have. So this implication, or what's implied in a monogamous relationship, from the structure and the idea of the relationship itself, is trust. And if a person goes outside the relationship, that's one of the worst things that you can do. That, you know, this is the so-called year 2023. Things are happening fast, and the society is actually deteriorating. So I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to give you a straight shot. It's actually one of the worst things that you can do as a human being, to be in a relationship and break the implied covenant of the relationship in this way. And how this precept is written is the having sexual relations with the wife. So the person knows that the other person is married, knows that they're in a relationship, and they go for it anyway. And that's the problem. The problem is the knowing and doing it anyway. And that's the heavy weight on your unconscious. Because when, let's say someone does this and no one ever finds out about it, which is very rare because of the nature of the act itself. So it comes out in some way. But let's say someone does this and no one ever finds out about it. The act is still collected. The residue, the imprint of the act remains collected on your unconscious mind. And then you're going to have to deal with that. And when you go to the judgment hall, the divinities there, notably Shai, Renet, Meskenet, Maat, Jehuti, Ahmed, they're going to detect it immediately. That's something that you can't hide in your unconscious, because the weight of it is so heavy on the mind that even if you ignore it, back in the unconscious, it is not being ignored, it's being weighed, meaning the weight of it is being collected. And this is very damaging to spiritual evolution. So if someone has ever done this, you have to, all is not lost. That's the positive part of it. All is not lost, because essentially you are spirit soul, and your errors are due to a deluded mind and desires and getting involved in polarities. And so what you have to do is you have to cleanse your mind. You have to cleanse your personality. You have to cleanse your heart. And how you do that is lots of divine chanting, lots of meditation, and the inner resolve to not do it again. And if you do those things, you will overcome the act, the egregious act. So all is not lost, because essentially you are supreme spirit. But if one ignores it, so that's in the past, or that's nothing. Did that a long time ago, you know, whatever. Oh, it's all good, you know, whatever. Oh, you'll find out, as many people find out, living in this society, in this culture, which actually indoctrinates you to be a sexual being. with the advertising, with the music. I haven't listened to the radio for probably over 20 years now. But being around, you hear, like if you go to a restaurant, you hear what music is playing. And some of the music that is playing is so, and this is on mainstream radio. Some of the music that is playing is so explicitly sexual. It's startling, really. And what's happening is that you're being indoctrinated. You're being forced into your lower nature by the degraded culture. And the more it's impressed upon, you might think, well, it's not having an effect on me. I'm only in this restaurant for 20 minutes or whatever. Every act that you perform, and listening is an act, every act that you perform is being collected in the unconscious. So you have to disagree with it, and disagree with it on, as soon as you become aware of it, you have to disagree with it. You are not a sexual being. You can have sex if you want to through your body. And obviously people were having sex in ancient times, right? And priests and priestesses did have children. We know this. The documentation is there. Meaning the hieroglyphic documentation is there. But life has to be regulated. It can't be a free-for-all that is being, like what's being purported in this society. Yeah, every TV show, there are little subtle messages or overt messages. And even making light of sexual relations outside of the man and the woman coming together. Making light of this very serious issue. And the issue is, when you get into a relationship with someone, you are actually seeking God. That's what you're doing. And if you construct your relationship in a proper way, it can help you to achieve what you're really searching for. When any person find themselves in a relationship with another human being, exoterically, it's yes, she's beautiful, I like her, she has a nice personality. But from the female side, he is a wonderful man, he treats me well, he's very handsome. And you know, he's a good provider, all these things. And so exoterically, that's, you think that that's what's happening and what's bringing you together. But that is the facade of the ego. That is the illusion of the ego that is playing out. What's really happening underneath all of that ego stuff is that you're seeking God. You're seeking the divine. And so relationships are to be developed where that can be fulfilled. And one of the ways of fulfilling it is, now you have a partner, now you have this person in your life. So now you can regulate your sexual activity. Meaning you don't have 5 and 6 partners all over the place. You have this one person. And so by having that one person, what that is doing is bringing structure to your life, and where you can direct your sexual energy to in one direction, and you're not all over the place. So it's bringing a certain kind of discipline to your life. And then the two partners through the relationship, if you are in a spiritual relationship, then you have the hard talk, you have the hard discussion. Now, how long are we going to keep this up for? Because truly what should be happening is that you should be conserving and sublimating your lower nature so that you can have higher mystical experiences. You're not going to be in your lower nature and in the exalted heavens of the pet at the same time. That's another way that you're trying to polarize yourself. And that kind of polarity doesn't work. So it's a way to regulate your life to get you, okay, I'm not having 2 or 3 girlfriends anymore. This is it. And then when you're with this person, if you're a truly spiritual relationship, then then through that relationship, you're working out the lower nature energies, and you start to relate to the other as through the physical body, as a physical manifestation of an underlying spiritual reality. And then you go deeper. You go to the mental level. Well, this person is actually mine. And then you go deeper. This person is actually soul. And then you go deeper. This person is actually spirit. And me and that spirit are one. Me and that spirit are the same. And so when the covenant is broken, that whole metaphysical process is broken. Not to mention on a very practical level, the pain and the suffering and the misery and the chaos that it causes. That's the going out of the relationship. You're in the relationship, Isfet, which is the force of chaos, is always lurking there. There's one place where Isfet is always lurking, in the relationship. Why? Because Isfet is entropy, is the force and power of entropy that is trying to break things apart. And like in the Amdua text, if you take Isfet, if you take entropy and you direct it in a proper way, you'll be destroying illusion. You'll be breaking apart your concept, your erroneous concept of reality. But if Isfet is not controlled and directed in the proper way, it's going to break apart things that lead to pain and suffering, as opposed to breaking apart things that leads to mystical realization, which is the absolute bliss that you can have. Having the bliss that you have, which is called Awit Ab. Awit Ab means expansion of heart, and it implies spiritual ecstasy, spiritual bliss. That kind of bliss is magnitudes, order of magnitudes, more intense, more blissful, more peaceful than you can experience through the best sex you've ever had. And that is the bliss that you're trying to get to. And the relationship is the pathway that's helping to regulate you to get to that higher mystical reality. But if the covenant is broken, then the whole process is messed up. And then the person tries to find another relationship. And you have to start from the ground up again, working through the issues again. But you have to remember that the issue is in the mind, it's in the ego, and that's not you. So self-forgiveness. If the other person doesn't want to forgive you, that's on them, but it's what you do with yourself. So you may ask for forgiveness and you may not get it. So you have to let go of that. But the true forgiveness that is necessary is forgiving yourself and making a strong resolve within yourself is not going to happen again. And when you get into another relationship, you're more stable, you're more regulated, you're more focused, concentrated. Why? Because you have a greater ideal that you're working towards, that you understand now that you may not have understood when you were younger, when you're first starting out in life, when you were under the spell of the indoctrination of this culture. And it's significant to know that pornography, if you look through the pyramid text, the coffin text, the papyrus text, the medical text, the wisdom text, you don't find any pornography. That comes in later, or when I guess you could call the outside groups started coming in. And then the culture started to become, very degraded, deteriorated, until the downfall and the whole catastrophe happened. And you know the story. But the problem is now you have an inner culture that you should be working on, an inner high culture. So whatever it is that you have to work through, it takes humility. It takes humility and actually squarely looking at yourself, like really taking an objective, non-partial view of yourself. What kind of a person am I right now? And then knowing that ideal, having enough courage to work through it. And you can heal from anything. Any error that a person has made, you can heal from. Because essentially, you are spirit soul. You are not the mind. The mind has made the mistake, not you. Where you went wrong is associating with that mind, that deluded mind, that is susceptible to making that mistake. But you are on high, the glory of spirit, far removed from the delusions of the mind. Then to realize that, you have to cleanse and purify your mind so you can see clearly through the delusion into the realization of spirit. And that way your heart will be made light and cleansed and pure, and you'll overcome anything that has ever been done. Okay, might do a little more with this next week, because this is a very important aspect of human culture. And the way how things are now, younger people, they're really up against it. They're up against the hypersexualization of the genders. And the culture is enforcing, not on them, on everybody, that you're a kind of a spiritual, you're a walking sexual being. So basically what the culture is telling you is that you're nothing more than an animal. And then you have to reject that. And so that's why in ancient Egypt, the music was highly controlled by the clergy, because they knew the power of music because of the vibration, the tempo, the pace. All of that has impacts on the mind and forms the mind, actually. And with the kind of things that are coming out now, it's, the younger people it's going to be a struggle for them, and an ordinate struggle, I would say. Okay, dua everyone, and dua for joining in and for listening to these very important teachings, and for our very important devotional on Saturday mornings. Attack, dua.